I will start with an introduction. Do you know what an economic crisis is? An economic crisis occurs when a nation's economy experiences a significant downturn. When an economy is in crisis, the GDP will go down and prices will either go up or down because of inflation or deflation. A central bank's major aim during a crisis is to limit damage and reduce its economic impact. This can be accomplished in a variety of ways, such as by boosting confidence and calming the market and ensuring that short-term credit markets work well. From this, the central bank's role as the financial sector main regulator is very important. It is a big drop in the country's economic performance as shown by less production and less demand, companies going bankrupt and rising unemployment. Because of this, there will be many poor people in the country. It can see that many countries have faced economic crises such as Pakistan, India and Sri Lanka. Thus, in this case study, we will focus on the economic crisis in Sri Lanka between 2018 until 2022. This section will examine the three most important aspects: what causes it, the solution to overcome it, and the effects of the economic crisis. In addition, we will discuss the nation's current economy and financial state as of 2022. Next, I will continue with the situation in Sri Lanka. Before that, do you know about Sri Lanka? The nation of Sri Lanka is located on an island in the Indian Ocean, not far from India's southeast coast. It has about 20 million people. The island's economy includes mining, agriculture, fishing, tourism, and manufacturing. It also has a lot of natural resources. Sri Lanka, which used to be called a Ceylon, became an independent country in 1948. It looked like it will be stable and prosperous democracy in the years to come. However, due to mishandled government finances, tax cutbacks, and the COVID-19 epidemic, Sri Lanka's exceptional economic situation has worsened in recent months.
Thank you, Rabiatul Adawiyah. As presented by Adawiyah, we already know what are the current situation of Sri Lanka and what kind of crises occur there. Now I will proceed with the causes and solutions of the crisis in Sri Lanka. So, the main reason why Sri Lanka's economy is in chaos is because the president is not doing his job well. The Sri Lankan government under President Gotabaya Rajapaksa cut taxes in a big way, which made the budget deficits grow. These changes affected how the government got money and how it spent it. Even the President Rajapaksa was aware of the loss of money. He saw it as an investment and did not plan to raise taxes for another 5 years. Experts and opposition leaders asked Rajapaksa's government and the Central Bank of Sri Lanka for months to get help from the IMF, but they would turn down the advice. And this will make the debt of the country worse in the long term. The second reason is external debt. Up until the middle of the 2000s, most of Sri Lanka's debt came from multilateral lending institutions. However, under Mahinda Rajapaksa, the country turned to foreign investors and lenders for most of its debt. The money was used to fund vanity projects rather than projects of national utility. Sri Lanka's foreign debt increased substantially, going from $11.3 billion in 2005 to $56.3 billion in 2020. Sri Lanka's economic crisis needs to be fixed first by taking steps within the country. Since having a lot of debt is the main causes of Sri Lanka's economic crisis, the government decided to put limits on what can be brought in the country. Food products include fish meat, fish fillet, milk cream, buttermilk, curdled milk, yogurt, butter, and other fats and oils made from milk. The restrictions are only there temporarily to help the economy back on track. This is one of the ways to handle the country's financial crisis, which was caused by a lack of foreign currency. The next step is to take action on an international measure. Sri Lanka has asked China to change the way it pays back its debts so that it can get through its current financial problems. Besides China, India agreed to give Sri Lanka a $1 billion credit line to pay for basic needs. Along with the credit lines, India also gave Sri Lanka $400 million in cash and $500 million credit line for buying fuel earlier this year.
The current state of the economy has led to a decline in the amount of electricity, food and cooking gas use, which is the first effect of the crisis. To reduce the power use, a finance minister has ordered all government departments to comply with her directive to switch off all street lights until the end of March 2022. Because cooking gas is scarce, approximately 1,000 bakeries have been forced to close their doors. During the last several months, we have seen the formation of lengthy line-ups in front of gas stations. The situation has become even more severe due to the recent spike in the price of crude oil. The government has mandated daily power outage nationwide to reduce the country's overall energy use. Secondly, the healthcare system in Sri Lanka is teetering on the verge of collapse owing to catastrophic power interruptions and a scarcity of critical pharmaceuticals. Doctors have warned that many people may perish due to this situation. All of the planned procedures that were to take place at the Peradeniya Teaching Hospital have been postponed because there is an inadequate supply of medicines. A substantial number of laboratory diagnostic tests has been cut down and the suspension of routine surgical procedure has also been implemented at many other institutions. In addition, there was a lack of emergency medications that may save life in other hospitals administered by the state. So, I will pass to the next presenter.
Now, let's talk about the current economic and financial situation of Sri Lanka. We can break this down to a few points. First, currently inflation is rising in Sri Lanka. Inflation hiked up to 18.7% in the country according to official news. However, unofficial numbers expose that it went up to 52% at least between January and July 2022. Sri Lanka is also facing a huge currency dip. Their currency, Sri Lankan rupees, plunged 33% against the USD. Now, the reason this becomes a serious matter is because the country relies heavily on imports. Hence, their weaker currency will become a big disadvantage. Also, most of their country's debts are denoted in US dollar for your information. Now, talking about debts, at this point, Sri Lanka's foreign debt is at $35 billion and 7 billion are due shortly. Now, it doesn't sound too weird that countries have billions in foreign debt, but the catch is, Sri Lanka is currently one of the worst performing currencies in the world, and a mountain of debt like this will only make matters worse. To give you an idea about what I mean, Sri Lanka's debts accounts to 122.4% of their GDP. Now, that's a mountain of debt. Moving on to forex reserves, the country's reserves is currently at 2 billion USD, which is way below their external debt repayment, which is at 6 to 7 billion. Now, my last point is poverty. Currently, poverty has also gone worse in the country and it's expected to increase from 13.1% in previous year to 25.6%. This means around 2 million Sri Lankans are slipping into poverty. It's safe to say that Sri Lanka's financial and economic condition is very bad at the moment. In fact, this crisis is the worst the country had ever faced ever since its independence in 1948. Thus, if not managed and handled well, this may be the downfall of Sri Lanka. Now, that's all from me. I'll pass the next presenter for conclusion.
In conclusion, economic crisis could influence the performance of the country, not only that it also affected in every aspect such as economy, political and society. The government need to rearrange their strategy in order to overcome the crisis and to ensure they can recover their economy in better performance. There are a few suggestions that the government of Sri Lanka could consider, which is the government needs to work together with the political leadership of the Tamil people to create a roadmap for economic growth in the area of the country that are currently experiencing the effects of the civil war. These regions are located between areas that have been severely affected by the ongoing crisis. It is imperative that India and not any other nation assists Sri Lanka in charting a course that will allow it to realize its full potential and enjoy the advantage of a peaceful neighborhood. The government of Sri Lanka is responsible for ensuring that the current crisis will not be exploited to further illegal operations such as smuggling and trafficking or to inflame public sentiment across the nation. So that is from us, and thank you very much for your attention.